thumbs up with a, oh, being live streamed. That's fine. Okay, perfect. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I'm just going to minimize the window just a little bit here so I can see all of the slides. But feel free, I want this to be as interactive as possible. I would love to have your questions. If there's any questions that you have throughout the presentation or anything I said, please raise your digital hand, unmute yourself, and we'd love to hear your feedback, as well as we definitely want to leave time at the end for any specific questions that you might have. And just in case you fall asleep in the middle, we'll wake you up for that part as well. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open my slideshow over here. Perfect. Okay, let's go ahead and dive right in. I think I have two stellar admins that are gonna let people in and do all the technical fun, so we can just have fun talking about sleep. They say it's an interesting combination, like a rabbi and a sleep coach. Like that's a really kind of weird thing to do. There's a famous joke, you might have heard it or not. You'll bear with me if you've heard it, but if not, it's a good one. The joke goes that there was a rabbi in Israel who died, and he went to heaven. And while he's there in heaven, he's brought up by the angels in front of the pearly gates or whatever it is, and they're scrutinizing every one of his actions, and they're going back and forth, everything he said, and he looked, and he ate, and he did, and the quality of his commandments, and he's getting really kind of hot under the collar over here. Like they're really, going through everything with a fine tooth comb. And while all this is going on, he sees behind him there is this like secular Israeli bus driver that also dies at the time and gets just like escorted right into heaven, no questions asked. So he's looking at the angels. He's like, as they say in Hebrew, "Zelo fair." Like that's not fair. Come on. Like the Israeli bus driver, you're just letting him right in, and me, you're roasting me over the coals over here. What's going on? So the angel said to him, "Look, Rabbi, let's be honest. Everyone knows when you were giving your sermons in synagogue, everyone fell asleep right away. But when he was driving his bus, everyone was on the edge of their seat praying." Right, and hopefully we can all appreciate that. So one way or the other, I'm good at putting people to sleep. Okay, we're going to quote some. We're going to share some quotes as we go along. Want to liven things up. If a man had as many ideas during the day as he does when he has insomnia, he'd make a fortune. If those of us who have ever struggled with sleep, if you've been there, you like lie the pillow, and all of a sudden, like all of the thoughts in the day just like pour into your head. You like get out a piece of paper and like write all of it down because all of your great ideas and creativity come out just as right as you're about to fall asleep. But that's not the right time for it, so we'll have to speak about that as well. Let's just go over a bird's eye benefit of sleep. Once upon a time, and you might think this is funny, but there was like an attitude, especially more in the entrepreneurial corporate world, that like sleeps for wimps, sleeps for babies. You'll sleep when you're dead. Now's time to push it, and like you're really tough if you could just kind of stay up a lot, and kind of as my mother says, burn the candle on both ends, and just stay up late, go to sleep, or stay up late, wake up early, and get things done. And what study after study has shown is that the exact opposite is true. You snooze, you win. When a person sleeps, they're able to maintain their optimal energy levels during the day. Their mental performance, mental prowess, clarity, focus, creativity, language skills, all comes about through sleep. All of that repair that it does for our brain enables us to really kind of have an edge on the competition, balanced mood and emotional response. We all know that if we've ever not slept well, we're moody, we're irritable, every little thing sets us off. Sleep is one of the key ingredients to having a balanced mood, staying stable, handling stress. Physical health and immunity. This is a big one, especially nowadays. When everyone's asking the question, how can we naturally keep our immunity high, that we're not getting sick, we're not suffering from those symptoms? And I actually recently made a short video about it, but sleep is just the powerhouse of our immune system. Many people think that when we sleep, we're actually kind of not doing anything much, but actually the opposite is true. You're not doing much. You're lying there, but your body is going into overdrive. In fact, your body, when you sleep, actually goes into a state of inflammation and opens up your immune system to do all of the repair, all the fighting, all of the immune memory is called, recreating the T cells, restructuring the entire immune system. So we all know that if we've ever been sleep deprived chronically, we feel run down, we feel ourselves getting sick, we feel those, the lymph nodes up. And so sleep is something that's very important for a solid immune system. Cycle of diet and exercise, this is also a big one. People who are chronically tired their bodies demand, first of all, they metabolize food differently. They'll actually gain extra weight Because of that, it's sometimes a vicious cycle. Sometimes when we'll speak about apnea a little bit in general, but sometimes I deal with apnea clients who can't sleep properly because they have apnea. They have apnea because they're overweight, but because they don't sleep properly, so they can't lose the weight to cure the apnea. So it's kind of this vicious cycle. Weight loss and metabolism is the big one. And also, when you're tired, you don't want to exercise. You don't have the energy to exercise. You don't have the time or energy to prepare healthy meals. Your body demands that kind of quick caffeine sugar rush that just kind of like up and down crashing. So sleep is really the foundation of a lot of areas of our health. And I'm seeing some points in the chat box. I'm going to keep the chat box open just in case anyone wants to chat something, but just looks like it was nice, some nice chat over there. Okay. Again, feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'm just going to power on like a train, and we'll see how things go. Okay, this is a quote from our best friend Jeff Bezos. Have everyone enjoys Jeff? He's the CEO of, or maybe the former CEO. I think he's graduating out, but he built like this $100 billion company called Amazon. He's a pretty wealthy guy. Jeff Bezos, just in case you thought like I would love to get a good night's sleep, but I'm too busy. Well, Jeff Bezos might also be too busy running a $100 billion Amazon empire, but Jeff Bezos gets 8 hours of sleep, and this is why. He says, I prioritize it. Bezos said of sleep, I think better, I have more energy, my mood is better. As a senior executive, you get paid to make a small number of high quality decisions. Your job is not to make thousands of decisions every day. Is it really worth it? One of those quality decisions might be lower because of you're not sleeping well. And I think we have to decide, do you want to be the guy in the mailroom that's kind of doing mindless tasks, or do you want to be, whether you're an actual executive or just the executive of your family, executive of your life, you want to be that person that's balanced, better energy, better mood, making sound decisions. And that really can indeed go a long way. So definitely highly recommend. Okay, sleep is as unique as you are. I do not believe a one-size solution or rules for anybody. Oftentimes people asking, how much sleep do you need? That really depends on the individual. Some people need 8 or 9 hours of sleep just to be kind of functional. And if not, they're just falling off their feet. Some people can get by on 5 or 6 hours. There's actually a very interesting genetic, I don't want to say deformality, that's a bad word, but a genetic mutation that actually allows people to double speed metabolize their sleep. So what a normal person's benefit of getting 8 hours of sleep, this person only needs 4, and they're fine. And so it's a very, again, I don't think that most people fall in that category, but at the end of the day, we all do need unique amounts of sleep. And as opposed to asking, what did Dr. Google say, or what did this person say, or that person say, ask yourself, learn your own body. What do I feel like when I'm on 8 hours of sleep versus 6 versus 4, and to be able to find their sweet spot and to be able to, to have that continuously for yourself. The same is true when to go to bed and when to wake up. The sleep doctor might tell you, 11 to 7 or 10 to 6 or whatever. And that's just bogus. Like everyone has personality traits where some of us are extroverted, some people are introverted, some people are more, whatever. People are more tense, more laid back. Those are our personality traits. So too, when it comes to sleep, we also have sleep personality traits. Some people are morning people, some people are night people. People have to know where, so to say, their cortisol patterns are during the day. Where's my prime time? When should I book my meetings? When should I have those serious discussions? And when should I not? And everyone has a different personality and a different traits within their sleep. So again, no one size fits all solution. Oftentimes I'll work with married couples that have like very mismatched sleep personalities, which is sometimes a good thing because you think about it. A new baby comes along, mazel tov. Well, he'll take the 2 a.m. shift because he's up anyways, right? And she'll take the early morning shift because he wants to sleep in. And again, sometimes it's good to be able to kind of mismatch those personalities, but we all have to know within ourselves when is that good time. Napping and caffeine, a very individual decision. As a general rule, if people are kind of having a hard time falling asleep at night, so then maybe napping is not a good idea. But assuming that that's not the case, sometimes, getting less sleep at night, and if you have the luxury of getting a nap during the day, sometimes that can be great for people's schedules. If that's what their schedule allows for, like the Mediterranean, kind of schedule, like taking that siesta in the afternoon, for some people that's great. And if that works for you and your lifestyle and gives you energy, then all the power to you. And the same thing with caffeine. I have clients, some of them, like 9 a.m., if they have one cup of coffee, they're like shot, they're going to be up for 48 hours, like they're super sensitive. And some people can have a cup of coffee at 10 o'clock at night and sleep fine. I don't recommend that, but like it's a very much an individual decision. The Goldilocks factor, a lot of people ask me about like fancy fancy beds and mattresses and pillows and things like that. I don't think you need anything fancy. You need something decent and you need something that's working for you. Obviously, if a person has, back issues, neck issues, and they're waking up with like back pain and neck pain, so then that is something to look into. Your pillow and mattress should be decent, but I don't think you need like the $10,000, luxury item that they're trying to sell you or wherever you're going. And also understanding what makes your sleep cycle tick. Some people are very sensitive to blue light, very sensitive to technology and radiation, all those kind of things. Some people not, right? And each person has to decide. Also, digestion is a big issue I see. Some people, can like eat 3 bowls of chocolate at 11 o'clock at night and just like go right to bed, and that's fine. And some people like have to stop eating 4 hours before bed because, they're very sensitive stomach. IBS is oftentimes, we see related to sleep issues. And so they need to be able to monitor that, to be able to eating the right things at the right times, that it's not affecting their sleep. Any questions? Or we'll just keep going. In which case, feel free to stop me. Okay, this is a little meme over here, right? I don't want to sleep like a baby. I just want to sleep like my husband. I get a lot of women telling me that. The famous, phrase like, "I don't want to sleep like a baby." I do want to sleep like a baby, but I don't know if you've had babies or not. But I've had some babies that sleep great, and some babies that don't sleep like babies. So I guess it depends which type of baby you want to sleep like. Okay, so let me just go over some of the top sleep issues that I experienced in my practice, and then we'll, certainly get into some more specifics. So, number one, hard time falling asleep. I think that's the classic issue. Frequent and prolonged waking. People are waking up multiple times through the night, and they're waking up and they're not able to go back to bed. That's a big one. Sometimes we'll have the case of people seem to be sleeping fine, but they're just generally exhausted. I'm working with a client right now, very much on this topic. Seems to be sleeping fine. No mental issues, no known physical issues, but just chronic exhaustion. Always feels tired, dragging himself around, can't have energy, addicted to caffeine. So that's really something that we deal with. Snoring and apnea, very, very common in our generation, deal with this all the time, as well as nightmares and night paralysis. If you don't know what night paralysis is, consider yourself blessed. The night paralysis is like where you're like having a nightmare and you like physically can't move, you can't get out of it, you feel trapped. Not a fun place to be. There's a lot that can be done about all of these things, but I'm just giving a bird's eye view of the kind of things that I deal with on a daily basis. This is a guy in a sleep lab. Okay, now just sleep normally. Oftentimes people ask me like, when should I go in for a sleep lab or a sleep study? And that's a great question. In my estimate, if you want to get like a real kind of pinpointed diagnosis of apnea, or you suffer from something like narcolepsy or circadian rhythm disorder, which are like hard brain, kind of issues, sleep labs are very good at detecting those acute sleep issues. But if you have insomnia, generally speaking, especially if it's more anxiety-driven insomnia, if you can't sleep at home, you're definitely not going to sleep in a sleep lab. There's not a lot of sleep lab can tell you about that if you can't sleep, and therefore, that's usually the kind of things that we'll work in with people right in their home. Okay, yeah, we're getting a comment of that. I'm going to ignore the comments now just because I can't read the comments as we're going along. But afterwards, we will check back with the comments, indeed, if there is something that everyone wants to discuss. Okay, so let me share with you just for a few minutes some of the clutch sleep mistakes that I see people making. Number one is sleeping pills and other products. Sleeping pills are being prescribed like water today. Millions and millions of scripts are being written in this country every single month for sleeping pills. If you go to the drugstore, the over-the-counter, the sleeping aids, there's a whole section, as well as the heavier prescription medication. In my experience, sleeping pills are not a long-term great option for many reasons. First, number one, generally speaking, it's masking over the issue. It's not getting to the root of the issue. It's just like, well, I don't really know why you're not sleeping, but here, take this pill. Hopefully it's going to knock you out. Number two, sleeping pills are linked to all sorts of dangerous short-term and long-term side effects, including night walking, night driving. I'll tell you a story about a client of mine in Los Angeles. It wasn't him, it was his friend who took Ambien. Ambien is a famous sleeping pill, went right to sleep and woke up in the DUI division of LAPD because he was arrested for a drunk driving. Why? Because he took his Ambien. Unbeknownst to him, he got up, walked, got into his Bentley, went down and drove down the road, crashed into 15 cars before he hit a telephone pole, and they arrested him for drunk driving. He doesn't remember any of it. Not normal, but you should know that is very normal. It is very common to have side effects from sleeping pills. So besides the fact that they are just masking over the issue, the side effects linked to cancer, linked to increased morbidity, increased dementia and Alzheimer's, all sorts of negative side effects that come from sleeping pills. I do recommend people to get off of them, and I do believe there's a lot that can be done that people can sleep naturally without the need of sleeping pills and or other products. Another clutch mistake that I see is technology and stress. definitely these things are not great for our sleep. Really kind of wreaks havoc on, most people have these things like right, the thing before they go to bed, the first thing they wake up, they're constantly wired, they're constantly glued, whether it's the blue light or just the stimulus or just the work stress. There's nothing on Fox News you need to watch at 11 o'clock at night that's helpful, that's going to help you sleep at night. I guarantee it. We're so wired and we're so constantly connected that we've made the most sleep deprived generation in the history of humanity is our generation because of the technology that we have a hard time with boundaries. We have a hard time putting it down. We just let that, kind of that, all of that hit us constantly. And that's not how we were designed to be built. It does not do well for our sleep. Point number 3 is lack of sleep awareness. Like a lot of people just don't know, do I have apnea? Am I sleeping properly? What's with my kids? How much sleep do I need? Like all these kind of questions. How do I really get to sleep? I'm under stress and this and that. They'll just go for the quick solution. They'll, quickly Google something or try this or that. And they just have a lot of the lack of awareness. How does sleep debt work? How do I increase my quality of sleep? What is my sleep personality? All these questions this is a very important part of our lives, and it's worth becoming educated and knowledgeable for ourselves how our own sleep process works. Improper breathing I see all the time, and this is related to snoring and apnea. Snoring is 80% of cases of apnea. Just to understand, snoring is where the throat, the airways narrow, and that's why you hear that kind of friction, whatever sound your spouse is making sounding like a 767 jumbo jet coming into landing, right? Whatever sound they're making, that's coming from a narrowing of the airways. Apnea is actually where the airways completely collapse. Very common, and it actually, what happens is, it collapses, the oxygen level in the body goes down and down, the body feels like it's dying, it sends adrenaline through your system to kind of wake you up to sit up and like take a gasp of air because you're becoming deoxygenated. And sometimes people can do this 30 or 40 times an hour, where their body, like, it'll never sleep deeply. Their sleep is so disturbed. It has all sorts of sleep negative consequences, health consequences, diabetes, heart attack, stroke. I mean, you name it. Apnea and improper breathing when it comes to night, huge, huge issue. Definitely recommend it. And the last point is missing the window and forcing sleep. A lot of people don't know really when their ideal sleep time is, so they'll go to bed too early or they'll go to bed too late, and then like they can't fall asleep, and then they'll put pressure on, then they're worried they can't fall asleep, and then they really can't fall asleep. I oftentimes see this with parents and kids. One of the number one mistakes I see parents making with bedtime is trying to put their kids to bed at the wrong time. Oftentimes I get too early, like the 5-year-old, they're like, well, they have these like weird notions like, yeah, every 5-year-old should be in bed at 6:30 at night, and the 5-year-old's like, no, I'm not tired at 6:30 at night. Like that's bizarre. And the parent's like, no, you have to stay in bed, and the kid's like now like stressed and traumatized, and there's this like struggle and battle back and forth. Now I'm not saying that maybe some 5-year-olds need to be in bed at 6:30 at night, but a normal 5-year-old does not. And therefore it's worth a parent thinking like, when's my ideal kid's sleep time, and how. Now sometimes that doesn't work well because the kid's like naturally a night owl, they're not a morning person, you got to get together for school, so there has to be a certain amount of flexibility there. But to be able to identify where's the proper window, to be able to teach our children and ourselves how to identify that, how to have the sensitivity for our body, recognize our sleep cycle, respect our sleep cycle, and to be able to get a proper night's sleep because of that. Okay, here's a little cartoon, right? How well I sleep at work, watching a movie, driving, and then laying in my bed at night. As soon as I head hits the pillow, eyes wide open. Okay, let's speak for a second about great sleep hygiene. Most people know this, few people actually do this. Our bedroom is a sleep sanctuary. I am a rabbi, so we'll quote a little Judaism over here. The Jewish home is considered a mikdash ma'at. It's a miniature temple. Each one of our homes is considered a mini Beit HaMikdash, a temple in Jerusalem that can house God's presence. And we understand if that was true, if the home is the temple, so our bedroom is actually considered the Kodesh HaKodashim. It's considered the Holy of Holies. It's a very holy and sacred space, and we should treat it like that, not only from a Jewish spiritual standpoint, but from the standpoint of relationship between spouses, and as well as in terms of our sleep, that we shouldn't bring everything into our bedroom. Give technology a break. I dare you, keep technology out of your bedroom and watch your sleep improve. Especially, I know when the COVID crisis is happening and everyone's working from home, they didn't have enough, not everyone had 12 home offices for every kid and every this and that. So the parents were oftentimes working in the bedroom, and that just creates in your brain, bedroom is stress, bedroom is deadline, bedroom is all this work. And it's hard to separate our brains from being able to process different things at once. So fortunately now, hopefully most people are able to get out. And if you are, just keep the technology out of your bedroom. If you want to watch TV, you want to be on the computer, do whatever, do it outside the bedroom. Highly recommend that. Consistent bedtime and wake up. Your body it learns. It has a very delicate circadian rhythm. And, some people can just be flexible and they can flop in and out of, kind of early morning, late morning, whatever it is. But for many people, we are sensitive on this, and we do need, even on the weekends, even on Shabbos, to be able to have somewhat of a consistent bedtime and wake up time to be able to strengthen our sleep cycle. Rest, not digest. There is a very interesting psychological phenomenon that comes with late night eating, especially people who are dieting. If you've ever been dieting, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They're like, you're disciplined the whole day until like 10, 11 o'clock comes, and you're just like starving and ravenous, and your body tells you like you're not gonna be able to fall asleep unless you eat like 12 pints of Haagen-Dazs right now, and you just like scarf down and you have all that, like, I have to go to bed full. So you have that, which is whatever, a certain psychological makeup. And then that actually, not only does it not do well for your body and for your weight loss, that we certainly know, but actually eating right before bed, definitely rich foods, but even a lot of, any heavy foods in that regard, will actually decrease the quality of your sleep. Because like I said, your body's doing a lot when it sleeps. It needs to be doing a lot. It needs to be doing all that repair, the growth, red blood cells, all the things that he does. It does not need to be digesting, like the, 12 egg omelet you just put into your body. It needs to be doing other things. So not opposed to like a light late night snack, but really, to try to keep it heavy. I try to keep it light and not heavy. And the last point is caffeine and exercise. Generally recommended not to have caffeine in the afternoon, certainly not late in the afternoon. 1 or 2 o'clock should be your last point of caffeine. Even if you are able to sleep with caffeine in your system, nonetheless, it generally decreases the quality of your sleep. So important to keep that in mind. Save the herbal teas for the PM. And exercise as well. Generally, they recommend not doing heavy aerobic exercise 3 hours before bed. So exercise is great, definitely recommend it. Ideal in the morning, okay in the evening, at 10 o'clock at night, even though that's your only time. If it works, fine, but oftentimes it gets people's, cortisol levels up and, harder to sleep in that dynamic. Okay, here's a picture of a bear, right? I had a hard time hibernating. My phone kept going off. Bears don't have a hard time hibernating. We do. Okay, complex cases. So let me just kind of share some of the more challenging cases that we deal with in my practice. So, what's really bothering you? Sometimes it's very obvious what's keeping people awake. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's kind of this inner working tension, stress, angst that's going on in their subconscious mind. Maybe they're not even aware of it, but it comes out in their sleep. I oftentimes tell people that insomnia is our greatest teacher. It teaches us a lot about ourselves, teaches us a lot about our mind-body connection, and oftentimes it's sending us a wake-up call to understand what's really bothering you. Sometimes we'll have a negative link or the home or bedroom. Oftentimes we'll get this, God forbid, in a case of abuse, especially if there was like a messy divorce or things, that people have negative associations for their bedroom, for their home, and it sometimes, sometimes they have to move. I mean, or sometimes they do move, which can be a positive thing, but assuming they don't have the ability to do so, sometimes we have to kind of restructure the way the subconscious mind views the bedroom and be able to process that trauma differently because of those negative associations that they do have. Shift work can be very challenging. Oftentimes they'll deal with doctors, nurses, pilots, whatever it is. And, not only do they have to kind of fight their circadian rhythm and like sleep in the day, but then they're like, 2-day shifts and then a night shift. And it's like, just like flip-flopping back and forth. Some people are able to pull that off. Some people find it very, very challenging. Hormone imbalances, definitely we can speak about that. I want to go through one of our hormone tests to see exact detail what kind of things that we pick up on. And lastly, is removing negative labels. So oftentimes I find that a lot of sleep issues are really driven from negative labels that we give ourselves. So people will say to themselves, I'm a bad sleeper. I have insomnia. I can't fall back asleep. And those are labels that kind of perpetuate themselves in our own subconscious mind. And those it kind of are a self-fulfilling prophecy. We become that which our mind kind of gravitates onto. So that's just, kind of an interesting thing to keep in mind. One of the things we have to do is actually kind of convince our own mind that we can sleep well, and then we can actually live up to that expectation. Okay, let's go ahead. I want to just speak again. Feel free to stop me. I'm just like plowing along like a train over here. But I wanted to go ahead and just share in my practice some more interesting cases that have come my way, just to kind of see the type of things that I deal with. So case number one was there was a fellow who couldn't sleep on Friday night. He was sleeping. We had he when he came to me, he couldn't sleep at all. And we got him sleeping every night of the week except for Friday night. And he was a very well-to-do, successful business entrepreneur in New York. And I was trying to figure out because most of my clients are Jewish, and most of my Jewish clients they actually sleep best on Friday night. Turning off the technology, time with the family, eating a larger meal. Most people sleep very well, and this fellow was not sleeping Friday night. So we ended up doing some subconscious work, and we ended up revealing that really his real issue was he was scared of death. And now death is not a pleasant topic to speak about, especially for young people. But at a certain point of our life, we have to be able to have some sort of say, I don't want to say peace. We have to be at peace with the situation. We have to come to grips with the fact that we're mortal, the fact that we're not going to live forever, and as opposed to trying to always avoid that, which was what his situation was. He was always just kind of pushing that out of his mind and never sort of say being able to come to terms with that. So what happened was he was always able to distract himself during the week. He would be busy and running around and always, people to talk to and things to do, except Friday night. He had no business, he had no technology, his family went to sleep, and it was just him and his thoughts, and this thought kept kind of coming back at him, and it was disturbing his sleep. And we were able to fix that issue, then his sleep was actually fine on Friday night as well. So just interesting the complexity of people's subconscious minds and how they work. I recently worked with a lady who we went back to her childhood, and she had a very stressful childhood. Her mother really wasn't there for her, and she kind of had to take care of all of her siblings and always be on guard. And her subconscious mind, one of the things that came up is she didn't give herself permission to sleep. She almost in her subconscious mind is like, I can't let my guard down. I can't just be off. I always have to be kind of taking care of other people. I don't give myself permission to sleep. And until we were able to unlock that, at that point we were able to help her sleep naturally. I had another case. I do have very interesting clients. Some of my clients are fellow therapists themselves. Some of them are doctors and lawyers. And I do have other clients who are rabbis, which is always fun to work with fellow rabbis as well. And this particular rabbi in the New York area, he really kind of struggled with the imposter syndrome. He kind of was holding on to like negative memories of his childhood and his adolescence, and he couldn't in his subconscious mind come to terms of why people respected him, why he was admired in his community, how he could be such a scholar when really he kind of looked negatively about himself. And that inner tension was kind of beating him up about his sleep, and he would have nightmares about it and all sorts of things. And so when we were able to unlock that, one of the things will do is dream interpretation, which to me is fascinating. Just like it's a whole window into the subconscious mind. If we are dealing with more, kind of subtle issues like this, that's how I helped his situation. Case number 4 was a case of a young man who couldn't sleep, and we ended up doing regression therapy, which was taking him back to his childhood. And he had a recurring nightmare when he was a little kid, like a phobia that there were cockroaches crawling around in his bed. And even though now he's like 35 years old and doesn't have that actual thought anymore, his subconscious mind associated the bed in a scary place, and so we had to kind of reprocess that in order to get him to sleep. And case number 5 is a client that I'm just finishing off working with now. She got COVID, her husband got COVID, and then she gave birth. She was alone, giving birth. No one else could be in the hospital. And then like 3 days later, it was Pesach, and none of her family was there to help her. And she got all her other kids, and her husband was in the hospital with COVID. And like boom, like all of that stress just like snapped. And then what happened was that oftentimes I see stress will lead to insomnia, not sleeping, and then the not sleeping actually takes on an anxiety of its own. So let's say, for example, in her case, high stress levels, high cortisol, she couldn't sleep because of that. But then when things calmed down and her cortisol levels went down, she actually developed this secondary anxiety, like, oh my gosh, what happens if this lasts forever? What happens if I never fall asleep again? How am I going to fall asleep tonight? All those kind of things that morph themselves into their own sleep anxiety. And that's the most common thing that I work with, that sleep anxiety itself, and just giving some examples of how interesting people are and how we work with them. I'm gonna pause now. I do want to get into like another section, but I want to go ahead and just see if there are any questions on the floor before I go further. Any questions? Wow, you guys are awesome. Okay, let's dive right in. Just in case there are questions, feel free to unmute yourself. I want to go ahead and I want to share this with you. Let me zoom in over here. So this is one of the things, and a lot of people, especially today, they want to be able to do things from home. They want to be able to do things from the comfort of their home. So let's say even if you were to go into a sleep lab and you were to get diagnosed with apnea or something like that, that's a one-time diagnosis. You're not really able to track your progress as that. They're not going to give you a sleep lab every week, certainly not covered by insurance. So what I found very helpful are actually, home using devices that are able to monitor your blood oxygen throughout the night. And I just want to kind of share with you what that looks like so you can be knowledgeable about how, your oxygen flows, throughout the day. So this is actually a sample report of one of my clients. And you can see, this black line actually represents the oxygen of while we sleep. The dotted line is the 94%. That's kind of considered the red line. You don't want your oxygen going below that. You really want your oxygen staying above that. And you can see over here, it's very normal that it'll go up and down. That's expected and that's normal. There is that fluctuation in the blood oxygen, but you can also see a few times it dipping below. This is relatively minor, but for some of my more, the high apnea patients, it looks like a roller coaster. It's just going up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, and their body is kind of like wreaking havoc here, going in and out of these hypoxia states with low oxygen, and that's certainly reaching its havoc on sleep. And you can also see this is the correlated heart rate. Oftentimes, again, this is pretty good. You want the heart rate to stay kind of basically below this dotted line, which is where, this client is, again, hopping up a little bit over here. This is minor, but sometimes the clients will have this as well. And then we have to ask a question, why is that? Is that due to, is apnea? Is it causing kind of this spike in the heart rate? Is it due to stress? Nightmares? Do you need to see a cardiologist? Again, these are all just kind of important diagnostic questions to understand. Just to kind of go back up to the chart here, we really want our oxygen to be up here, and this person 95% is pretty good. When it starts, spending a lot of time down here, that's when things do get problematic. ODI is like how often it kind of comes off of its baseline. And if it's coming off of the baseline too much, then that's where it kind of raises an alarm, and we want to be able to do that. I'm going to take a quick somebody put in the chat over here, what equipment is used to track the O2 and heart rate. So these are digital devices. I'm happy to share with you. You can buy them online too. And the company I like is called Hpa, EMAY. You can see over here, and it links to your phone, and then kind of produces this report in your morning. So between $50 and $100 devices, we find can be very helpful for tracking these things. There are more expensive sleep rings. I happen to like this one that specifically tracks oxygen because that's usually one of the key components that we're looking at. A lot of the other, the Fitbit or the Nike watches that do track sleep, it's not necessarily so accurate at looking at the oxygen. And therefore, if you are concerned for apnea and things like that, I would go for one of kind of these more designated apnea devices, if that makes sense. Okay, the comment over here is nothing more distracting while trying to get back to sleep in the middle of the night than the person that person sleeping next to you. And just oftentimes we'll get those spouses and everyone's kind of jealous of the other thing. How come they are sleeping? I actually had one client who she was struggling with insomnia, and then her husband, he always slept great. He actually developed insomnia because like his wife was always up, so it got him all nervous, and then they kind of two of them together, they were just two peas in a pod. But no, seriously, we do want to get to the root of that before that gets out of hand. Let's go ahead and I would dive in. I want to show you one of the functional medicine testing that that I actually work with a team of doctors that specialize in these kind of testing. Many people ask me like, what is functional medicine? How is that different than regular medicine? I'll share with the following analogy. I used to have terrible psoriasis on my hands. My hands used to be like all cut up and red and inflamed and bleeding. It was very, very uncomfortable, socially uncomfortable, many ways uncomfortable. And I went to a lot of doctors. I went to like, top dermatologists, UCLA, Yale. I was going to all these top guys, and they were like, their question was like, okay, this guy has psoriasis. How can we fix his psoriasis? So try this treatment, try this light therapy, try this Epsom salt bath, try this cortisol cream. And I was like, it would work for a little bit and then not, and then back and forth. And it would just keep flaring. And it was like, this is so frustrating. Why can't any of these doctors figure that out? And I would often ask them out, Google, like, why is my body doing this? We're like, well, there's no known cause for psoriasis. We don't know why, we just have to like try to treat the symptoms. And I was like, okay, doctor, whatever you say. That's kind of the society I grew up in. Until I actually came across, kind of accidentally with Hashgacha of Rajas. I'm a functional medicine doctor, and he's like, Doron, we have to ask yourself, why is your body in a state of inflammation that is producing psoriasis on your hands? And I was like, oh, you mean we can know those things? He's like, yeah, 100%. That's what functional medicine does. And I was like, okay, let's do that. And I found that it was just much more holistic in the sense of really getting down right down to the key components of how the body functions. And through that, I was able to cure my hands. I mean, basically, you can tiny little red, but like basically, my psoriasis went away when I was asking the right question. So when I was building my sleep practice, I mean, it started working on the more behavioral and cognitive side of things. But as I was working with enough clients, I realized there is a medical side to things, and I do want to be able to bring on the specialist that can be able to identify in a subtle way, not in an acute way, like, oh yeah, you have a, like whatever, something, God forbid, acute illness, but to understand and pick up on the subtleties of the body and how it's affecting sleep. There is a comment in the chat section that I'm going to jump to right here. I can only get 6 hours of sleep a night, no matter when I go to sleep. So is he happy with this and stop trying to get it figured out 7? So I think the question would be, how do you feel during the day? If you feel during the day fine, if you feel well rested, if you feel balanced, if you feel healthy, then get 6 hours, and that's great. And you can be as productive with your time. If you feel run down and exhausted and not enough, then you kind of have to brainstorm about why that is and how could how we can improve that situation. So I want to go ahead and I want to show you just the kind of testing that they're doing. This is all done from your home. So like the test kit is actually mailed to your house. It's done via urine and saliva. So it's kind of not non-invasive. And there's a lot of things they're looking for. Sex hormone issues are very common. Oftentimes I'll get two patterns, especially with my female patients. Well, three patterns, I guess, mainly. One pattern is we'll see that their sleep will actually fluctuate based upon their hormonal cycle throughout the month. Oftentimes during pregnancy, their sleep will get pushed off, and sometimes kind of take a few months to kind of recover after the birth. We see that, and then kind of pre and postmenopausal, we'll also see the sleep fluctuating, and it's important to understand the patterns and how that plays in. I mean, these tests do take into account age, they do take into account kind of premenopausal and postmenopausal ranges, but sometimes when it's kind of below or above or abnormal in that regard, that's something that our functional medicine team will be able to pick up on. This is a really important graph just to understand what cortisol is. Imagine cortisol as your waking chemical. Cortisol gives you energy. It gives you, your daytime response. Now, if your cortisol levels are too high, if they're up here, that means you're under a lot of stress, maybe psychological, behavioral stress. You're in a lot of job, you're under trauma, whatever it is. Or it could be that your system, your organs are under stress, and they're kind of producing all of this. And that's something that we don't want to just. It's not just a question of like you have a high cortisol or low cortisol. We actually want to see the patterns. The patterns can be very revealing to our team because we want to see like are you spiking at night and that's why you're not sleeping well, or is your morning off? Maybe your baseline, you think like, well, if I'm super low cortisol, I'm just like the most chilled out person. That's amazing. It's actually not amazing because if you don't have a lift here, if you're not kind of following a pattern, that could mean you have what's called Hpa Axis Burnout, and your whole system is shot. It's like your engine just like can't produce that which it should, and oftentimes that can lead to exhaustion. Again, I'm just speaking in general terms, but these are some of the kind of things that we're looking for. DHEA is I would almost call it a miracle drug. It's a precursor to a lot of the hormones, as I'll show you in a second. But if people are low in DHEA, which oftentimes people as they age, we find this, the symptoms can be broad, and DHEA is something that's safe, it's over the counter, but it can really have a very positive effect on a lot of our hormonal systems. Like, so you can see here, this is a pattern, and like every time I sit down with our functional medicine team, they'll go over these charts. I can't claim to know exactly what every one of these terms, I can't even pronounce them half the time, but they're looking not only at the levels, they're also looking at how each one of these levels metabolizes, and they're oftentimes able to pick up a lot of things. So I was on the phone with my doctors yesterday, and they were picking up on these levels, and they basically kind of showed me some imbalance and showed me how this is trending to that, and that's converting to that, and they're like, so it's basically from all these numbers, the person has gut inflammation. I'm like, oh, okay, great. The person has gut inflammation. Now we know how to rebalance, and we also know a longer term perspective of how to be able to recreate that. Oftentimes, we see there's a very clear link between our digestive tract and our overall health, mental health, and sleep. Your body produces serotonin here, not here. It processes it here, but it's actually produced from the gut. So oftentimes when people are, suffering from depression or anxiety, that's linked to IBS, poor digestion, a lot of interesting things going on over there. And there's a very strong correlation. We're not just looking at one system or one symptom. We're looking at the whole person, from beginning to end, and how all these things are processed. So I'm just going to go through this a little bit, so you can kind of see the kind of things you're doing on. Melatonin is an interesting one. So, we definitely want to make sure the melatonin levels are strong. If a person's melatonin levels are low, the question is why. I mean, first point of call, we're always asking, how can this person make more melatonin naturally, without supplements? And if we do need supplements, would basic melatonin work? Or would something like 5-HTP or L-tryptophan, which is a chemical precursor to melatonin, be a actually better option for them that their body can naturally produce it? Many people ask me like, oh yeah, I got the whole family on melatonin. I take melatonin, Melachoose for the kids. We're just like dishing out melatonin like water. In America, you can buy this stuff easily over the counter. In countries like the UK, you can't even get it from a doctor. You have to go to a specialized neurologist to get melatonin because they do not give it out because they don't believe in it. So interesting, just kind of sociological shifts of how we reacted. It's not a great thing to take melatonin unless you have to. Now, again, if it works and you have to, it's not the end of the world. I would keep your doses down. I heard recently somebody was telling me they take 70 milligrams of melatonin. I'm like, that's just too much melatonin. Your body does not need 70 milligrams of melatonin. But this is micrograms, by the way, not milligrams. But they're taking a huge amount. Not a good thing. Melatonin is a naturally occurring hormone in your body. So if you go ahead and ingest it, if your body really is producing it okay, and really you're like, well, I can't sleep while I don't take melatonin, your body will actually naturally produce less, and now you become kind of chemically dependent, and you'll need more and need more, and it just again, I'm not anti-melatonin, is not the worst thing in the world, but to be sensitive to it, that they can have kind of longer term health consequences. And understanding it. This is the pattern between cortisone and cortisol. Cortisol meaning your free cortisol, that which your body's actually working. Cortisone is the stored form of that actually chemical. So looking around and seeing how the body is metabolizing them can be very important. Some neurotransmitters, obviously neurotransmitter health is very vital in sleep. Melatonin over here, the B6 and B12 markers. Again, these are just the kind of things that the functional medicine team is looking at the interaction between these cases. But I've really seen both in terms of their insight and their ability to kind of pick up on very subtle points, really to be able to correct any imbalances that are going in the body to get them sleeping right. Because it's not. I don't believe. Some doctors will tell them, yeah, it's just a product of aging. You're always going to have this. Nothing we can do about this. I don't believe that that's a correct response. I believe that there's always a lot that can be done to help gain balance both in mind and both in body to be able to give people this fountain of sleep that is so important. Okay, I'm going to stop recording there. I want to open the floor now to any questions you might have, and open it up to see if anybody wants to discuss anything specifically. Hope I didn't put everyone to sleep over here. Baruch atah Adonai.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Judy.
Can you speak at all to the sort of genetic predisposition to having what you might call sleep issues?
Yes, 100%. I get that a lot. People tell me, my whole family has sleep issues. My mother has sleep issues. My father, my brother. It runs in my family. The simple answer to that question is yes. Some people are just naturally great sleepers, and some people are not. You have people that just, their head hits the pillow, they're out, they don't think about sleep their whole life, and some people will struggle with it. But the fact that we have a genetic predisposition not to sleep well does not mean that there's not a lot that can be done. I believe that within the world of sleep, there's always room for enhancement. I do not believe a person should ever think, well, I just have bad sleep in my family and that's all we can do. Maybe a person is naturally more tense and anxious. There's a lot that can be done to be able to process that stress and anxiety differently. Maybe a person is, whatever, naturally they just produce less melatonin or they produce whatever. I mean, we saw the, kind of the gamut of the tests. Obviously, our genetics play a factor, but the question is, how can I, in my unique circumstance, regain that balance to be able to sleep my best, throughout my life? So definitely agree with the genetic component, but I'm always asking the question, how can we enhance your situation from wherever it's coming from? Somebody asked, am I willing to share your slideshow? I'd be happy to share my slideshow, not a problem.
Josie?
I have a question. I just wondered, you touched on it a little bit, but what's the difference between functional medicine and and regular medicine, so to speak?
Sure. Yeah, no, it's a great question. And so from my perspective, which is kind of like as a health coach, I'm kind of like looking at this world from a bird's eye view. And it's really interesting because most doctors kind of fall kind of squarely in one camp. You have some doctors that are kind of moving back and forth and kind of sitting somewhere in the middle, and you'll look at them and they think very poorly of each other. when you speak to the conventional medicine camp and you ask them, like, what do you think about functional medicine? They'll tell you, oh, it's quackery, it's not based in evidence, they're just running these tests and making money off of supplements, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's not scientific based, there's no training. And then, you're like, okay, doctor, thank you. And then you go to your functional medicine team and you ask them, like, well, what do you think about conventional medicine? And they'll be like, well, it's narrow, it's insurance driven. They're not taking time to treat people as individuals. They're lumping everyone together. They're not, really getting to the root of the problem. And you're like, oh, so there really are these kind of two schools of thought. In the functional medicine camp, you have an increasing amount of MDs, classically trained doctors that are then going for the subspecialty of functional medicine. The Cleveland Clinic, which is one of the top medical clinics in the country, recently opened up a department of functional medicine within their program to be able to offer these services alongside with the more conventional medicine options. But like I said, I think functional medicine, it's looking at the idiosyncrasies of a person. It's less about a case study of 500,000 people were cured with X treatment, and they're more looking of how can we treat you? Let's really kind of get down and ask the fundamental questions in your system. What does your body exactly need to recreate that balance? Functional medicine doctors are oftentimes very reluctant to prescribe prescription medication and are much more eager to try to solve it through natural means, a modification of diet, behavior, and maybe supplements, but as opposed to going over to prescription medication, which they find is oftentimes harsh and foreign to the body. So it's a broad debate, within the medical world. But I've personally seen, certainly the classic medical world is really best at dealing with acute and black and white issues. If a person has a heart attack, if a person has a stroke, if you break your arm, if a person has, something like that, that's very kind of clear black and white. Conventional medicine is the best thing to really be able to fix that issue, diagnose, fix, and and go in and treat that. Versus more, I would call it kind of soft medical issues, generalized stress, generalized sleep issue, IBS, chronic fatigue that are not easily identified in the Western system. That's where I've seen really kind of the more functional system with a more kind of patient and in-depth process really kind of produce some great results.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
I have another question. Oh, go.
Hi, Rabbi Lazarus. Sorry to interrupt. So my question is, I had two of my children were as very young children, like ages 7 and 9 and older, really struggled with sleep. While other children were dreaming of baseball games and Barbie dolls, these children were pondering the secrets of the universe, and always at nighttime and always in their beds. They're very bright. And I'm wondering if you've worked with children or if you have any commentary. Now these children are near or in adulthood and taking care of their own sleep needs. But I'm curious, sort of retrospectively, what are your thoughts?
Sure, it's a great question. I do work with children. I don't work with babies. Like if it's like, in infant sleep training, I have colleagues that deal with that. Sometimes it's sleep training the parents more than the babies, but that's kind of a separate cup of tea. But once kids are 5 or 6, I'd be happy to deal with them. Essentially, kids are just little people, like obviously you have to speak to them and put it in different language and different terms, but essentially it all boils down to the same foundations of how we deal with sleep. And yes, you oftentimes, within the same family, you're like, are we all related? You're like, well, you're from dad's side, he's from mom's side, that oftentimes will indicate their sleep quality. But different kids do have to process, different sleep differently. I actually created a video on YouTube. I'm happy to share it over here. It's a 45-minute video on bedtime and how to kind of deal with more kids that are more challenging with bedtime. Ultimately, the foundation, I believe, is to teach kids, empower kids to have sleep knowledge, to take ownership over their own sleep, to be aware of their own sleep. Because oftentimes, especially with little kids, like they think sleep is a punishment. Like big sisters get to stay up late and do fun things, and like I have to go to sleep. I mean, come on, like they fight it. So be able to empower them. There's great books, what happens when they're, like kids books, of what happens to their body when they sleep, how to calm their body, how all these things work, how much sleep they need, how mom and dad set an example of, technology, and mom and dad have bedtimes too, and really to kind of create that environment that the kids really feel empowered that this is their sleep and they're taking it to heart. And in terms of, being overthinkers and overactive minds, we have to teach kids now as young kids the coping mechanisms, that they're not calling me up when they're 40 or 50 years old struggling with these things, as many people are. We have to teach them about meditation and mindfulness, which are super powerful, things for kids to deal with. We have to be able to teach them journaling. We have to give them a designated worry time outside of sleep time. We have to make sure that they're not struggling with angst and stress and unresolved issues, that they don't have anybody to speak it out. So I think that as early as we can, to empower them with those life skills, that they're able to develop that internally. And at whatever age they're coming, there's always a lot that can be done.
Okay, Sandy Hall and then Alice.
Hi. Night terrors run in my family from when the kids were younger. And listening to you, it's interesting how you're connecting, because there's IBS in the family, and I'm more holistic. There's Western versus Eastern, and it's harder to diagnose some of these reasonings. But I was wondering if you were going to take on a patient, or do you recommend certain blood tests, for more of this kind of what you're talking about, the cortisol and the melatonin, for that, before you would see a patient, or what would you recommend, to start something like this?
Great question. So let me speak in general about nightmares, and then to get more specifically. So with nightmares, essentially, I find that the treatment falls into kind of two areas. There's the area where there's a clear biochemical trigger. So certainly people eating late at night, spicy foods, heavy foods that don't agree with them, that's a clear trigger for nightmares. Oftentimes we'll find that nightmares are a cofactor and a side effect of medication. Oftentimes psychiatric medication can definitely, trigger nightmares. So to be able to speak to whatever doctor is prescribing them to get those underway. And then I would also want to look at the subconscious mind. Why is the subconscious mind scared? Where are these thoughts coming from? Or is this coming from an inner angst and an inner place of tension? And to be able to process that differently, that these nightmares are not coming out. And sometimes that can also be involved in lucid dreaming, about taking charge of its nightmares and not always playing victim in the way that the nightmare is set up. So I believe that there's a lot that can be done with that. But if we felt that it was kind of more of a functional medicine question, I always speak to my team, as I'm not a doctor. I don't pretend to be a doctor. And, I employ doctors very much for this reason. But usually what we'll look at when there is IBS and we are kind of seeing that gut brain connection, oftentimes they'll go for an allergy test to see kind of where the sensitivity of the stomach. They'll go for a stool test to see the bacteria makeup of the stomach and be able to see exactly what's going on over there. And then, potential additional testing based upon that. But those are usually the kind of things, if we do suspect digestive issues, those are usually the kind of things that they're looking for.
So do you ask your doctors what tests they would recommend before you would completely analyze? Because when you're having they were called night terrors, which supposedly now can be a form of PTS, but when you're two, it's like PTS, and other psychological disorders, but so what? 1 second, Hillary. Okay, 1 second, I'm talking. Okay, sorry, we had a laundry question. But I'm just curious, because I've gone to a lot of doctors with minimal success, and from 2 to now 30, it's hard for the person. But so what would you start? Just make an appointment with you or something, and then you take a questionnaire, and then you consult, and then stuff. Is that kind of like the protocol you do?
Right. I have if you go on my website, I can put it in the chat over here. Anybody can go on and make a free consultation with me, 100% confidential. I don't mix my my Rabbi and my sleep coach hat. Yes, I'm happy to speak to anybody and advise kind of based upon those individual symptoms.
Great, thanks you.
My pleasure.
Alice.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just wondering, I had a son who was definitely a night owl, and it was so difficult because the poor thing had to get up at, be at school at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. And at night, I put him to bed and he'd suddenly get all energetic, 11, 12. It was so hard for him to fall asleep. I don't think I handled that very well. What would you have suggested?
That is a great question. And in truth, our school system and our society does not really speak to the complexity of different sleep personalities. It assumes everyone needs to be up. Now, when we become adults, sometimes we have that flexibility. You know, if you're not a morning person, you know, I mean, especially today with a lot of remote work, you know, oh, you'll be the, 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. shift, and that works great for people. But when we're in school, they kind of assume everyone's kind of got to fall in line. And, you know, I mean, I used to have to be at school at before 7 a.m. I mean, my middle school and my high school, you literally had to be there before 7 a.m. just to get a parking spot. There was no parking lot in my high school. And like, it was great. We were up I was up before my parents. I was up at 6 o'clock, and like, you know, my whole, middle and high school career. And that's challenging. You know, that's really challenging for a lot of people that don't fall in line with that. So I think, you know, certainly the point number one is to be able to speak to the child and get them to own the issue, because any time that there's a kind of top down parents disciplinary, you know, approach, especially when it comes to teenagers and things like that, we definitely see that there's obviously going to be the rebellion. They're going to fight back. They're not going to, want to comply. And to get them thinking, like, practically, what can we do to help wind down your body? That, yes, we understand you're a night person. You're not going to be in bed at 7 p.m., but like, let's try to kind of shift that will be able to be more manageable, that you're not going to bed super late and then not able to get up for school. So to be able to kind of collaborate with the young person to be able to help that situation, that would be great.
Thank you, Rabbi.
My pleasure.
So I just have a personal comment. I've been on a quest to improve my sleep that's probably been almost of the past year. And in the process, I bought a new bed and I started tracking my sleep using an Oura ring, which not just tracks my sleep, like it'll tell me how much, if I got enough deep sleep versus REM sleep versus light sleep. And it'll also tell me hints about, oh, you'd be better going to bed earlier rather than later. Like it'll tell me a time window. And I have sleep apnea, so I sleep with, like I gear up at night. I've got my mouth guard and I've got all this stuff, but
your
my
astronaut suit.
Yeah. And then I also get really hot at night, and I'm sure that there are other women of a certain age who can relate to that. So I use cooling pads, and that really helps. And so each of these little things adds up to the other things. I don't snack at night. I quit doing that. And I have improved my sleep just by doing each of these things. And interestingly enough, I had a little eczema patch on my elbow that has gone away since improving my sleep.
Fascinating. 100%. Those are all great things, and I appreciate how knowledgeable you are. Yeah, the Oura Ring can be very helpful in tracking sleep. It's considered one of the higher end products, and can be excellent with that. So certainly, I wish you much success in your continued blessing to get a great night's sleep. It is indeed very important.
So I'm wondering about the hormonal component. So in the slide that you showed, first of all, I noticed that there were collection times that were like throughout the day. So this person is giving blood at different times.
It's not blood. That specific test is urine and or saliva. So there's no blood needed.
Oh, it wasn't blood draw. Okay.
Right.
Good clarification. So if it shows that, like certain hormones are low or high, is there some treatment for that then? Or do you take a supplement that increases a hormone, or is there something you can take that would decrease cortisol? Or
yes, there are solutions to all of these things. From a kind of more conventional medicine standpoint, there's something called hormone replacement therapy, which I know has some controversy. Some doctors believe in it. Some doctors believe it's too risky. So speak to your doctor about that possibility. That is a prescription medication if given. But aside from that, I believe that there are a lot of over-the-counter products that can increase natural secretion of hormones. And also, like, if you took a look at the chart that I was sharing, it's not only a question about, like, are the hormones low? The question is, like, in what point in their metabolism is it breaking down? So something like DHEA can actually be a really great building block if the body is naturally low on it, to be able to introduce, that you can just buy it on Amazon or over the counter, to be able to have that DHEA, and then the body knows what to do with it. If it didn't have enough of it, it didn't have enough building blocks to begin with, if you give it DHEA, oftentimes it'll metabolize it in the exact right purpose. And that's just, one example. There's a lot of other, for male and female sex hormones, that to be able to support those in a natural way, there are a lot of great over-the-counter options.
And so do you ever recommend that somebody, say as a trial, take over-the-counter DHEA without doing testing, just to see if it helps?
You know, in my perspective, I don't like the kind of like, just like throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. I like testing because it's coming from a place of empirical data. But if one, didn't have the option for the testing and they wanted to try it, I don't think it's the end of the world to try it either.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So if somebody wants to set up a consultation with you, they should just go to your website.
Go to my website. Yeah, there's a place to set up a free consultation there. I'm
That's
happy to.
executivesleep.org.
Yes. Yeah, and I'll include my email here just in case anyone wants to reach out to me. I have a lot of emails, but we'll include this one in there for sleep related things. You could send this to me. Okay, amazing. Well, thank you to the Jewish Federation for all that you do for our community. Thank you for hosting me today, and I'm happy to continue this discussion. Whoever would like to speak further.
Thank you, Rabbi. That was super informative and also entertaining.